The Big 12 as a whole collectively says no to Memphis joining this quarterback-driven league. And although quarterback may not be the biggest position of strength for the Cowboys entering this season, it may not necessarily need to be either.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your top stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Oldeo State. Today, we get to jump right into this quarterback conversation that Oklahoma State finds themselves within. Now, we are going to talk a little bit more about where they kind of shake out and how this league traditionally has viewed the quarterback position. But the game manager aspect might be applicable, at least for the beginning of the season, for whether it be Zane Flores or Hauss Hejny. I think as the season progresses, we'll have a completely different conversation. But as the season begins, anytime you're in a rebuild, you still have to have some of those cornerstone spots that you can lean on to help mitigate the game, to allow the quarterbacks to understand the nuances of what they're trying to get in and out of when it comes to coverages and packages and audibles, and understand the different layers of the game that they can progress within. So before we get rocking and rolling here, I want all of you fine folks out here on YouTube, hit the comment section. What do you think are going to be the biggest positions of strength for Oklahoma State entering the season while we figure some things out at quarterback, or we do a multitude of quarterback, whatever the system is? What are the positions you think we're going to be able to lean on? I'm going to kick it off here. We'll go basically from 3 to 1, biggest positions of strength. And I think we got to start off here with the running back room. Coming into the season, we had a very good understanding of what we'd have from a Lightning and Thunder packaging. Naturally, you had Jaden Allen Hendricks at 6'2", 240, alongside Trent Hallen at 6'3", 245 as the Thunder guys. Then you had Rodney Fields, who showed glimpses of what I would determine to be a little bit of a Justice Hill beginning to his career. Not to mention the fact that Rodney Fields Jr. did put up over 200 yards collectively between the offensive running game and the passing game. And in the midst of that, we saw glimpses so much so that I think he's going to be a major contributor this upcoming season. He might be RB1 right now, and that might be beneficial to Oklahoma State. But I think the depth here is important. We mentioned Trent Hallen being the battering ram, 6'3", 245 pounds. To be able to have somebody that you can rely upon in short yardage situations is going to be instrumental to the success that the quarterback room is going to have developmentally throughout the course of the season. Then you have Sesi Vailahe. Sesi had several opportunities, naturally, in the transfer portal to take his talents elsewhere, because it did appear as though he was going to get buried behind the likes of Rodney Fields and Trent Hallen. And then you have Caleb Hicks coming in. Caleb Hicks arguably had the best spring out of all the running backs on the roster. Now you have DJ Duggar coming in, 6'1", 215-pound freshman. Is a freshman going to contribute? Well, maybe not, but I don't think we anticipated Rodney Fields Jr. not only contributing this previous season, but being pretty instrumental in the pieces of success that we did have. And then you have Freddie Brock. Freddie Brock is the highest-rated dude in the game, who collectively does have over a couple thousand yards rushing between Maine and Georgia State. This previous season, he just got close to that 900-yard marker. If he's ready to rock and roll at the very beginning of the season, he could factor in to why this running back room is going to be one of the better ones in the conference. There's an expectation at Oklahoma State to be able to lean on the running backs, and I think this is going to be absolutely no different in Stillwater America this season. Behind Rodney Fields Jr., Trent Hallen, Caleb Hicks, Sesi Vailahe, and then eventually Freddie Brock, and you could even factor in potentially DJ Duggar into this conversation. Next, I feel like the biggest position of strength that we have after the running backs is going to be the wide receiver room, primarily because whenever you have the ability to have the X and the Z be 50-50 ball guys, then you have some of the slot receivers to kind of manipulate the defense and get the numerical advantages. I think we have that. I think coming into the season, everyone was pretty excited to see what Talon Shetron could finally blossom into, but naturally injuries are going to kind of derail that a little bit. We do have 6'4", 225-pound Shotomide-King. I've been very, very high on him. Shamar Rigby was so good at Purdue, they had to find ways to put him on the field as a freshman outside of that guaranteed 4 games that don't count against your eligibility. Then you have Jalen Lloyd, the speedster coming over from Nebraska with a couple 500-yard seasons under his belt. Sam Jackson V, former TCU quarterback, converted to wide receiver between Cal and Auburn. 5'10", 200 pounds, seems to be the guy that you're looking for to kind of step up and be that catalyst. He's also going to be pretty deadly in the return game. Is this finally going to be the emergent season of Cam Hurd? We've seen glimpses of what he could potentially be, how he's going to fit into the offense. It's going to be interesting this season. You have Trey Griffiths, another big body, 6'3", 215-pound wide receiver. Christian Fitzpatrick, 6'4", 220 pounds. As excited as I am about Ayo Shotomide-King, some of the conversations recently have been in 7-on-7 about how Christian Fitzpatrick might be him, and he's going to be an absolute problem for individuals to stop. Then you have Cam Abshire, 6'4", 200-pound transfer coming in. Terrell Davis coming over from UCO after shattering a bunch of records and having a miraculous season. Royal Capel, he's going to be that gadget guy, freshman, that's going to get some opportunities to line up beside somebody like a DeJuan Lofton. I do think that no matter what happens in the TikTok world, I think Gavin Freeman is going to be an integral piece of success, not only as a slot receiver, but I think he's going to factor into the return game as well, which is going to be very reminiscent of what Sam Jackson V is going to bring to Oklahoma State as well. I know words are hard for me, and I'm stumbling around a bit here, so we're going to continue to shift on to the next biggest position of strength, and I think this might be the biggest position of strength in the season, and that is linebacker. You have Chendavian Bradley, 6'4", 240 pounds. Malik Charles coming over 6'3", 290 pounds. Wendell Gregory was a massive addition out of South Carolina. Another 6'3", 255, 260-pound guy. You have Tamarick Johnson, who has a full year in the system. You have Taj McCoy coming over from Colorado, formerly of Oklahoma City's Putnam High. Then you have Puaso Utu, I think, could factor into this because we did see pieces of him playing this previous season. Then you have Ike Esenwoon, the Energizer Bunny, rocking number 25, should be able to finally put himself on display this season. You have Brian McCoy coming over from Akron. Brandon Rawls is pretty raw to the position. And you have Darius Thomas, the guy coming over from Louisville, in Western Kentucky, has been able to kind of make a little bit of a name for himself recently. You have the speedster Trip Wright coming over from Ole Miss, and then you have Gunnar Wilson, the redshirt freshman that is 6'2", 221 pounds at the moment. I feel like whenever you look at all of these individuals, and then you also have Carl Vion Young, 6'4", 215 pounds, coming in as a redshirt or a true freshman, which could have the potential of redshirting. Whenever you break these things down, Oklahoma State may not necessarily need Hauss Hejny or Zane Flores to take the reins and immediately be a gunslinger that's leading us up and down the field. If the linebacker core is as good as I think they're going to be, then they're going to be able to mitigate a good portion of the game to help the quarterbacks. The safety blanket and the tight end, of course, that's going to be big, but the wide receivers, whenever you have a bunch of 6'4" dudes on the outside that can play both Z and X, and you have a bunch of absolute burners that can line up the slot, you have a lot of versatility. You can go 4 wide, you can go 5 wide, you can essentially go with an empty set. When you have speed at the quarterback position, those numerical advantages are going to be absolutely massive for Oklahoma State. Not to mention, outside of the quarterback development, the wide receiver dude that he's going to be able to rely on, you got to be able to hand the ball off and change the game. The speed of the quarterbacks are likely going to keep us in a lot of advantageous situations. But I do feel like that the wide receivers and the running backs that are kind of the encapsulation of what the quarterback position is looking to get to is going to be really good for Hauss Hejny and Zane Flores this upcoming season, because it is a quarterback-driven league. We do need some big things out of this quarterback crew. You can expect big things if you are rocking and rolling today with Game Time. I'm sure a lot of us have decided to make last-minute decisions to head on over to a ball game with friends or family. Maybe it's even the game day or the morning of the game, and you suddenly realize that you want to be in the stands. That is exactly where Game Time comes into play. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes all of this possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to the first pitch, the first hit, the first tip. It doesn't matter. They've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worrying out of your buying. Game Time is the official ticketing partner of Locked On Major League Baseball. Makes it easier than ever for you to get in on the MLB action. If you're tired of the endless scrolling and trying to find the best deals, Game Time Zone Deal Picks gives you those best deals and best seats in the section for you. It is time for you to take guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, create that account, redeem that code LOCKEDONCLLEGE for $20 off. That is Locked On College, all one word. Download Game Time today because it is last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. From game time to the prime time position, that is going to be quarterback, naturally. We just covered some of the positions of strength that are going to likely allow the quarterback a little bit more of that maturation process. Going up against Oregon, week 2, that naturally should be able to create a little bit of an obstacle, but it'll also give us a good indication on where this group of quarterbacks might end up leading us throughout the course of the season. This is a quarterback-driven league. Whenever you think of some of the greatest that have ever done it, the Sam Bradfords and the Patrick Mahomes and the Pat Whites and the RG3s, and now you got to factor in Nick Foles at Arizona. You could even go Jake Plummer at Arizona State, Desmond Ridder recently at Cincinnati. You have Todd Reesing at KU, Mason Rudolph, obviously Oklahoma State. We get to include Alex Smith at Utah now. Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, all of those dudes were rocking and rolling in the Big 12. And I would say recently we've had some really good quarterback play, but it hasn't necessarily been a quarterback-driven league until now. Those days are back upon us. So where does Oklahoma State stack up? Now, there's been a lot of top 10 quarterbacks for the Big 12 put out. Sports Illustrated recently did one where they had Sam Leavitt, number 1, Arizona State. That's very, very, very fair. I think following up, you got Rocco Beck to Iowa State. Yeah, he's a dude. Sawyer Robertson, Baylor, ended the season potentially better than any quarterback in the country. Josh Hoover had a massive season at TCU, so much so that Hauss Hejny didn't get a ton of PT. Avery Johnson. Could we be looking at a Zane Flores or Hauss Hejny revolutionary moment similar to what Avery Johnson had at K-State? It's very, very possible. Bear Morton, I'm a big believer in Bear Morton at Texas Tech. When healthy, when he starts and finishes a game, Texas Tech is 14-4. Jalen Daniels, a couple years ago, looked like a legitimate Heisman candidate. This previous season took a little bit of a backseat. Is that potentially because Andy Kotelnicki? It'll be interesting to see what they do. Then you have Devin Dampier coming over from New Mexico to Utah. They're very, very high on him and what he could provide for the Utes. Brendan Sorsby had a good year at Cincinnati, coming over from Indiana previously. Caden Salter, phenomenal career at Liberty, just goes over to Colorado, and he's also competing with a 5-star quarterback of the freshman variety in Colorado. The list can continue to talk about the Big 12 being the quarterback-driven league because of this, right? You go back to your Sam Bradfords or Jason Whites and your Bryce Petty's. Oklahoma State had some dudes in that mix, right? We've discussed the J.W. Wolf, Clint Shelf style of system that these two dudes, Zane Flores and Hauss Hejny, may find a way to kind of replicate. But I think at the end of the day, the fact that this is a league with a ton of very, very good quarterback play is going to be beneficial to Hauss Hejny and Zane Flores. Because if you are able to compete with the Rocco Becks of the world and the Sam Levitts of the world, I think you could have even factored, at least to some degree, Jake Retzlaff into this conversation before he decided to take his talents over to Tulane. I think that is a good thing because they're striving to kind of keep pace. They're striving to keep up with some of the top quarterbacks in the country that just so happen to be in the Big 12. And for all of us growing up, I mean, there's a lot of jokes thrown at the Big 12 as a league that didn't have any defense, but we had a ton of offense. Part of that was just ridiculousness, right? But some of it is accurate. But part of the accuracy is you had a bunch of NFL level QBs. So it's going to be difficult from a defensive perspective whenever that's the case. And the SEC didn't have that. Quite the opposite, actually. They were not known for all of their quarterback play, right? So when Alabama's trying to find a quarterback, the Big 12 was loaded down with QBs, including names like Cliff Kingsbury. I mean, heck, wasn't the Big 12, but Mike Gundy was a quarterback in the Big 8. So collectively, this has been a quarterback-driven league. The difficulty with it was, the joke was, well, there's no defense in the Big 12. When I think it's more apparent that, yeah, the defense maybe wasn't on the SEC's level, but the SEC didn't consistently have a multitude of quarterbacks that could hang 50 on you any given day. In the SEC, it was few and far between. You would have some of your top tier quarterbacks for sure, but it wasn't 2 through 8 through 10 through 12 that you had the prospect of potential NFL quarterbacks. I mean, Brock Purdy. I think a lot of people weren't necessarily considering him to be a big-time NFL quarterback coming out of Iowa State. But it's a microcosm of what this league traditionally has been. It has been a quarterback-driven league where you do put up 50 points, you do put up 600-700 yards, and you have these massive battles that make the defense look bad. But at the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily mean that the defenses were horrendous. It just means that the quarterback play was so good in the Big 12 that it kind of set the standard. And now we've found a way to kind of evolve back into that league. Once again, is there going to be good quarterbacks in other leagues? Absolutely. But do they compare to the top and bottom of the Big 12? They absolutely do not. And again, I think this is going to be a good thing at the end of the day for somebody like Zane Flores or Hauss Hejny. Because if you're able to lean on the positions of strength while you kind of, incorporate your game into the playbook, as it takes time, you're going to want to be driven. You're going to want to be pushed. You're going to want to have a really high bar of what this thing is supposed to look like. And with the Sam Levitts and the Rocco Becks of the world, I feel like you're definitely going to have that. Yep, Nico Marchiol. Could he be the guy at West Virginia? At one point in time, he was viewed as one of the highest West Virginia recruits of all time, especially at the quarterback position. And they've had some dudes like Will Greer and Pat White. So this has always been this kind of league, and it's nice to see that we're getting back to that. And I do think that that's going to end up being an advantageous thing for the quarterback room at Oklahoma State, even if you were to factor in Banks Bone in this conversation. Are we going to be relying on speed primarily? Yeah, probably. But when you've got dudes on the outside, you've got dudes in the backfield, if we feel pretty good about where our offensive line is getting their development from those multitude of coaches, when you have 3 offensive line coaches, the technical aspects are naturally going to get better. When you increase that, perhaps you give yourself an opportunity to have a catalyst at the running back or to have a committee style approach. We set ourselves up, in my opinion, to kind of allow the quarterbacks to figure their stuff out. Are we going to run a multi-quarterback system? Possibly. Is it going to be predicated upon injury? Potentially. But regardless, you're going to want your quarterbacks, or at least I want my quarterbacks, to be in a league where quarterback play is under a magnifying glass. Because if you can compete with the heavy hitters of the Big 12 when it comes to quarterback efficiency, ratings, and numbers and statistics, then you're probably going to set yourself up for a pretty significant NFL future. Whether you're a Brock Purdy or a Mason Rudolph or Baker Mayfield, at the end of the day, it's all about the development. And I think Oklahoma State does have enough areas of strength to allow there to be some time for Hauss and Zane to figure this thing out. Because for Oklahoma State to have a big run, for Oklahoma State to have a 10-win season, at some point in time in the season, the quarterback play is going to have to get on the level of some of these other names. From a talent perspective, I don't think that that's going to be much of an obstacle. And I do think the positions of strength do kind of help provide some of that wiggle room, comfort room, a barrier per se. As the season goes on, we'll see more what a quarterback play is going to look like. But this is the right league to be a quarterback in, and it's the right time for Oklahoma State to lean on these other dudes to show that the quarterback play in Stillwater is going to be comparable to the best in the country. Memphis, unfortunately, is not being classified as one of the best in the country, and they're not the only ones. Evidently, Tulane is putting together something comparable. It just hadn't necessarily been put out as publicly as the Memphis deal. And from a financial perspective, especially in the immediate, it's probably a good thing that Memphis could potentially slide over and help the Big 12, especially doing it the SMU route. As much shade as we all threw at SMU for essentially paying their way into the ACC, here we have Memphis doing the same thing. And I was a little surprised with how quickly we said no. But I think this does prove that Brady Omark and everybody else in the conference is simply waiting on the other shoe to drop, which is the ACC. The ACC is the other shoe, which would end up being kind of ironic because SMU paid their way in there essentially, and they forfeited any of their rights to profitability within the conference for X amount of years. Memphis went above that. Not only did they offer to go X amount of years till 2030 without gaining any revenue, but they essentially are willing to pay every school in the Big 12 a couple extra million a year. And in the meantime, with a bylaw that indicates that if by 2030 you're not seeing us adding enough value, you can cut us and there's no love lost. So I think it's a good thing that Memphis is trying to position themselves to be in this spot, to be in this next round of realignment. But again, I do think this proves that Brett Yormark and the powers that be are waiting on the ACC to fall apart. So we're not going to make a decision on bringing in a Memphis or even a Tulane for financial incentives when the future might have the Clemsons and the Miamis and the Florida States of the world at least entertaining to a very serious degree about coming into the Big 12. And even if that's not the case, let's say it's one of the other schools like a Virginia Tech or a Pitt or a Louisville or Georgia Tech. Would those schools probably be better than Memphis for the conference, for viability, marketability, profitability? Potentially, yeah. Likely, yes. Now, Memphis does have some heavy hitters backing them. So financially, I do see the argument to have Memphis in the league. Originally, I thought maybe we would have gone with a Memphis over a Houston. But we now find ourselves back in the spot where we're saying no. Now, does this mean that Memphis inevitably tries to weasel their way into the Pac-12? Potentially. But it's good to see that schools around the country understand that this whole thing's not done yet. And the Big 12 has definitely put themselves in a position to be thought of a little bit differently than the original round of realignment stuff when OU and Texas left the Big 12. Perception is improving. And we have to do that on the field again this season, especially on the football field. But Memphis, A for effort. Maybe take some of that money, though, that you were going to spend on athletics and spend it on the city. I don't know if it's 100% true or not, but there has been stuff floated around that one of the biggest obstacles for Memphis is just the crime in the area. Now, they have been able to get some big-time names. Most recently, they had a quality quarterback that would have kind of fit into the Big 12. But the Big 12 is also looking at themselves as a destination conference and potentially a destination for those Miamis and Louisvilles of the world if the ACC does, in fact, run into more issues in the next few seasons, which is kind of inevitable, if you ask me. We've seen what it's like to favor the top, schools in the conference, or at least from a TV viewership perspective. We did it. We made some concessions for OU and Texas, and it ended up not being good for the league. So I feel like the ACC is just living on borrowed time, and I kind of feel like the Big 12 feels that way as well. If not, we probably do take Memphis. We probably do take extra money for every single team in the conference. We probably even entertain the idea of Tulane doing something comparable to what Memphis is trying to accomplish. But we didn't do that. That tells me that Brett Yormark continues to have his eye on the future of the conference. And we're willing to wait a little bit, even if that means you lose in Memphis, you lose Tulane to the Pac-12, even if that's the case. The Big 12 feels like we're positioning ourselves to be one of those destination spots when/if the ACC does, in fact, start falling apart. Anywho, that's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you liked it, dislike if you didn't. That's okay too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe. My podcast and people out there, you're everything that makes this work. I appreciate what you do. So go do what you do. Hit the stars. Leave some reviews. All right, y'all. Later, taters.